Welcome to our video where we're talking about the sacraments, and how they're important as part of the church and our spiritual journey. I'm joined by Father Conroy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, thanks for this. It's good to have you here and to talk about this quite important issue.
Yeah.
So, what we're going to do in this discussion is just go through some key questions, some key themes, so that we can explore the importance of the sacraments. And Father, I guess a first question that I would be pondering, based on our knowledge of of the sacraments and the issues that we've discussed up till now, is what is the importance of the sacraments? Why do we have them?
I would say that they are a challenge to us in our life. I think the problem is in our society is that we have tended to reduce our approach to life in many ways. Intellectually, we've reduced it to the material and the physical, which at the same time none of us actually do, because the things that we treasure in life, our family and our friends, our relationships, we understand that they go beyond the purely physical.
Yes.
But naming that what it is difficult. And I think it's the word sacrament itself is, it's a Latin word, but it translates a Greek word, mystery. Mystery is not something that we don't understand. It's something that we do understand, but we find difficult to put into words. So, for example, if you were to think of the first time you held a newborn baby in your arms, that you knew what that was, you knew who it was, physically it was all there, but it created something in you that went beyond the purely physical. It opened your mind in a way that you wouldn't have understood, to a wider reality, and not only of the child or the world, but of yourself as well. But putting that into words is very difficult.
It is.
So what a sacrament seeks to do is to open us up to the fullness of life, which is a mystery. And it invites us to engage with it.
Yes.
So the church has got these 7 sacraments, which are really, they're markers of pivotal points in our journey through life. So some very human experiences which tend to either close us down, maybe through illness or anxiety or worries, or else offer us the possibility of opening up to a fuller relationship with life. And I think people generally now are searching for that. In the past, let's say, the church was able to offer that quite clearly. Now, if that was perhaps possible because people were more open to the mystery of life, whereas now everything, I think, it is a bit more closed down, and it's all material and physical, and what we hear again and again, that's all that there is. And yet people are searching for something more than that. They're searching for the truth of life. They're searching for a meaning and a purpose in their life, and they realise that somehow or other they need to in some way get free from the material. There's a danger in that, because the material is part and parcel of the reality of life. So it's not about saying that's bad, which some, I think, modern spiritualities do, but it's to try and find how in these present physical experiences that we have, we can go beyond that and search for the truth, find it, that the truth has come to meet us. And the sacraments in the Catholic Church are opportunities at those important points in our life, in our journey through life, where the physical is opened out to something beyond that, to this encounter with God, the encounter with Christ.
I mean, that's interesting because you mentioned that a lot of people are searching for something, and they're searching for meaning. We're not short of books out there on self-help and classes on meditation and mindfulness and all of these different things. And I think what I'm taking from what you're saying is that the sacraments is actually far more than that. It's actually about a relationship. It's about an encounter with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, I think in my experience of looking at these books, these self-help books, a lot of them focus the person on themselves and their ability to transcend the moment. But it's, when you think of what we value again in life, it's not ourselves. Yeah, we do, but what we're searching for is a relationship.
Yes.
So there's a truth there that I think we need to take, be aware of, and that's that there is something in us that's searching something that outside ourselves that completes us. But so to find that, we have to leave ourselves.
Yes.
And encounter someone else, be challenged by someone else. And for the sacraments, that's God, that's the Holy Spirit bringing to us this divine presence, the life of God, and sharing that with us.
I think you mentioned there in the moment and divine presence, and we were talking earlier about Pope Benedict's book. He has a very interesting book. It's called Signs of New Life, homilies on the sacraments, and it's basically talking about the importance of the sacraments. And one of the key points to come out of that book is that Pope Benedict suggests that the sacraments put us in contact with the Redeemer, not in a vague sense, but at a particular time and place. And it's interesting because you mentioned the moment, because that's not to be confused with the present. So what Pope Benedict is saying is that the sacraments bring the eternal to today. It's not transactional. There's a time element to it, but the sacraments are there for all time because of the divine presence, which is not something that happens at a certain hour of the day. It's something that's ever present. So I thought that was quite an interesting take, and links quite clearly to what you were saying there as well.
Yeah, I think if you look at a lot of spiritualities from the East especially, I think they have grasped something of a truth, and that is that they try to take the person who's meditating out with time, so that time in some sense stops and you become just present to the whole of reality. And I suppose a lot of us in the West, we're used to thinking of time as being, moving from one moment to the next. And eternity, what's eternity? Eternity is just, for us at that point, is time stretching into infinity, which is kind of frightening, kind of boring. But eternity is actually that being present. And that's it, that all time is present. And in that's where we meet God. Because that's who God is present in eternity. So that gives us, I think, in theory, an insight into truth. Because truth is one. If you think, like science is looking for the great unifying theory, because they realise that, in our world there is this confusion of things. How do things come together? Otherwise it's all disparate, and that's the confusion we feel. Spiritually it's the same. And that oneness that we're seeking is God.
Absolutely. No, it's interesting, and one of the things that that I'm quite interested in when talking about the sacraments is how we undertake that encounter with the sacraments from a personal perspective. So to what extent, Father, do you think there's a degree of personal responsibility in how we approach the sacraments? Let's take Holy Communion as an example, right? Say for instance, you're not in a state of mortal sin, so you go and have that encounter. But say you're not having a particularly good day, and your disposition is, you're tired, you've got so much on your mind. Does that divine encounter change its characteristic depending on how you're personally feeling in that moment? Or is it the case that the dynamic relationship with the Holy Spirit is such that it's not that important, or is it important as to how we encounter it? It's a tricky one, I think. But
St. Therese of Lisieux, the little flower, she wrote in her autobiography that she struggled to stay awake at times in her prayer, and this caused her great distress. And then eventually she had this insight, or God sort of led her to understand that when a child is awake or a child is asleep, the father looks on the child with the same love. So she found peace in that, and she realised that what was important there was she was trying to give the time to God. So if you go to Mass, whether you're in a good mood or a bad mood, whether you're concentrating or not, the fact that you have made that commitment is what God sees and smiles on.
Yes.
Now, does that mean that it doesn't matter? Well, it doesn't quite mean that, because when we go to the sacraments, it's part of this journey of seeking God.
Yes.
Right? So sometimes will be more profitable for us, let's say, because we're human beings,
Yeah.
So we've got to live with the reality of who we are.
Yeah.
But just the fact that we're still, our intention is still, we're seeking God and we understand this is part of it,
Yeah.
then God will be there. And we don't always know what God's up to in our life.
No.
Sometimes it's only years later we understand what's
Yes.
happening. So part of it, I think, is also trust that God is doing what He needs to do to get us to where we want to be in searching for the truth and searching for God.
And trust in a merciful God as well.
Yeah.
It's interesting you're saying there about, falling asleep. I remember reading something from Pope Francis, who said that he often fell asleep when praying, but he actually came to the conclusion that's just like falling into the arms of Christ as you fall asleep. Which I think is a nice way to put it. And St. John Henry Newman talked about how the sacraments themselves are a divine dwelling place. So I think there's some comfort to be taken from that. I recognise what you're saying, that there's a lot of responsibility as to how one approaches the sacraments from a personal journey point of view, and what you want to get out of that relationship. But I think there's some comfort, to take from the fact that we all know that we can be failures at times, and actually we're not always going to be in that position of constancy as how we encounter.
And I think it's also important that we don't judge ourselves on because it becomes almost like it's all about what we do. And yourself in a relationship, sometimes you carry your partner and sometimes your partner's carrying you in the relationship. And in our relationship with God, sometimes the effort there that we make is good and profitable, but an awful lot of the time it's God carrying us.
Yes.
And I think awareness of that, it brings a certain peace and joy that very often I fear that religious people don't have, because they don't understand that mercy and compassion of God. They don't trust to think, I need to do this, I need to do this.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking as well about the sacraments, and obviously there's several of them, and our plan is to add some additional resources online and people can have a look at them, and we can talk about individual ones perhaps in a future video if people want it. But I was wondering whether you feel, are there certain sacraments that are becoming less popular? I was reading something quite recently about the sacrament of reconciliation, and how it's perhaps, maybe the word going out of fashion is the wrong way of putting it, but you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I think definitely that sacrament is, I suppose it's intimidating, isn't it? It's intimidating for all of us, because none of us, well, I think none of us like to admit our faults, and certainly none of us like to admit our faults to someone else. I think that's part of it, that possibly there's also another aspect that in our modern society there's this thing developing of, well, who's right and who's wrong, and nobody's got a right to tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm doing anything wrong. So I think that particular sacrament is is a challenge in different ways. It's a challenge to make us realise that there is a truth that we have to stand before. In other words, I read someplace someone saying that we all want to be judged. We want someone to see the truth of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting again to come back to relationships, that the whole point, say, of marriage is to give someone space to be themselves.
Yeah.
The love,
To grow.
yeah. But you need someone to be able to stand before you and say, I see who you are,
Mm-hmm.
and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're not perfect,
Yeah.
but we're on a journey together so that we can grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what that sacrament of reconciliation, sacrament of confession is about. It's about us having, again, the trust in God to come before Him and say, here I am.
Yes.
And to, in God's loving gaze, then to say, well, maybe that's not who I am. Maybe there's something better
Yeah.
in me. And tell that to be drawn out by God. But part of that is also the painful journey of saying, okay, that's not so good.
Again, that comes back to responsibility as well.
Yeah, and that's a difficult one, isn't it? But I think it's always got to be done in the light of this love and mercy of God.
Yes.
Otherwise, we run away from it.
Yeah. I think some people, people I've spoken to in the past, they might often not have had a particularly good experience, in the,
Probably.
during confession, and depends who you get, the priest or the maybe it's less the priest, could be about you. It could,
Yeah.
so
It's usually about the priest.
it could be right. I'm being nice since you're a priest. So, what would your advice be then?
Well, I remember I went to confession once in St. Peter's Basilica, and then I confessed. I think it'd been
Nice place to do a confession.
nice place to do a confession. Well, it wasn't so nice. And it'd been a few months since I'd been there, because where I lived, it was difficult to get in.
I see.
To this, right? So I went in, and this was the opening gambit, so many months, and the priest in there launched into a tirade, and sort of what he did was he presumed that I was someone different than I was.
Okay.
That was in Rome, and it was a career. It was all about career.
Right.
So what he made a judgment that he shouldn't have made,
Right.
and got it all wrong.
Yeah.
And so what he said to me was, as far as I was concerned, completely irrelevant
Yeah.
to my life, because he had his,
Yes.
maybe for had been in before his career or whatever. So I think, when you go into confession, and what it's all about, it's an encounter with Christ, not with the fella. And priests have to be, I think, aware that it's not them. That
Their
it's,
channel.
and it's what they're trying to present is the life of the resurrection.
Yes.
And if we don't do that, then when we meet God, we'll be in trouble.
Yeah. It's interesting because you've shared your experience, and I had an experience once as well, and it wasn't with you, but I hasten to add.
That's good.
So
Well, that's maybe good. Wait till we hear how it gets on.
I remember I was confessing a sin, and the priest tried to put words in my mouth to say, no, was it actually this sin you committed? And I'm like, no, I had to correct them. But sometimes you need to appreciate that the priest may have been there all day, hearing confession. We're all human.
And that's it, we are human.
This is it. And sometimes we just need to kind of understand the purpose of it.
Yeah.
It's not really about who administers the Eucharist to you. It's about the encounter.
Yeah.
You might have an issue with a particular individual, or Eucharistic minister, or you might not like a priest, or for whatever reason. But actually that's more about human.
Yes.
That's of the world issues.
Yeah, and that's where we are.
That's where we are.
So maybe that's a growth point for us as well.
Well, yeah.
A challenge.
Yeah. But then, of course, there's many more sacraments as we've discussed, and I think that what I'm hearing from you, Father, is that the importance of that encounter is that it's a divine experience, and it's about a relationship. I think what you've said about how the sacraments are in some ways akin to how we would nurture a relationship with somebody else that we love and care for. And sometimes, like you were saying before, to make progress in life, you know, a partner might have to say to you, look, you might have to take a step back here before you go forward.
Yeah.
And clip your wings a little bit. But it's about engaging with that spiritually in a type of
Yeah.
relationship. It's important.
It is, and I think it's about believing in the reality of God present to you,
Yes.
and that He does speak to us
Yes.
one way or another, through sometimes through nice people, sometimes through not so nice people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's quite a nice way to wrap it up. Not unless you wanted to add anything else, but I think there's lots in this. It might be that there's opportunities to maybe do some more videos on specific sacraments if there's a call for it.
Yeah.
But no, thank you very much, Father.
Thank
I
you.
enjoyed that. Thank you.